Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories. We're going to have to start this one over, guys.
No, we're going to keep it. This is good.
And we dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm
And
Brad.
more. Oh, is it my line? I'm Pete.
And I'm Giff.
Ooh, I don't know what came over me there. I went from 0 to 60 in a...
You were just saying how you were so tired, and now all of a sudden you got your second wind. Once you hit that record button, you just perk
Well,
right
we'll
up.
see about that.
It's like a shot of adrenaline right to your heart.
It's like Viagra for your brain.
I need to take a breath if there's anything you want to say.
Well, I would like to say, first off, welcome back, everybody, to Pop Culture Yearbook. Thanks for tuning in again. Be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Insta, our website, TikTok, and our Buy Me a Beer page. And you can contribute to the podcast. You can check out the little extras that we put on there. Reach out to us. We love interacting with you guys. And thanks again for listening.
Yes.
Got to pay for that. Got to pay for that Twitter account somehow.
That's right. That $8 a month or whatever it's going to be.
I ain't paying no. You know what? If somebody else, we don't need a verified account. If somebody wants to pretend that they're us, let them do it.
You say that now. You say that now. And
it's like the line in Untouchables. Who would claim to be that? Who is not?
Right. That's true. Good callback.
Oh, man. Brad, what do you got for us tonight?
All right. It's 2011 still.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked Parks and Rec, one of my favorite shows in the history of television. Some days it might be my favorite. Otherwise, Seinfeld is still up there. But this is not the year that it came out. This is not the year that it ended, which is kind of how we usually pick them. But I picked it for 2011 because this is when season 3 started. And this is when Ben Wyatt and Chris Traeger, which are Adam Scott and Rob Lowe, joined the cast, and a show that was already good. Season 2 was good. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed it very much, but it went to a whole new level, and it had some of the classic episodes, and I thought this would be a good time to talk about it because of those guys.
By the way, Adam Scott is one of my favorite characters in any of these comedies. I think I love him.
His character, you say? Not just him?
Both. Well, I mean, both the same. I mean,
character
or actor, however
you said character, so I didn't know if you were just talking about Ben Wyatt.
My God, whatever. Adam Scott.
Jesus Christ, I'm just trying to clarify what you're saying.
See, and I would say like Chris Traeger's character, because he is so
that's what I'm asking. Jesus,
all the time, and he uses first and last names all the time, and he's just such a fun character and upbeat and yeah. So excellent pick, bringing us in this season, since they are
questions in the rest of the show tonight.
Do you think that you see a trend like on almost all of these great sitcoms and comedies? It's always like right at season 3 and season 4 that they all seem to hit their stride and are the best seasons of the entire series. And then after that, it seems like that there's something about when you hit that third season, which bodes well for us starting next year.
Yes, it does.
But anyway, but do you guys agree? Like you think about Seinfeld, I think Friends season 3 and 4 is when it hits its stride, and then it sort of goes downhill a little bit after that. But
I don't know.
Well, I would tend to
yes.
I would tend to agree with you, but I remember when I was rewatching How I Met Your Mother, and I was just kind of skipping through seasons and just picking episodes out of certain seasons. I think when I got to season 6, there was almost no episode that I skipped in season 6. So that would maybe be the outlier. Yeah, that would maybe be the outlier.
Because we're on season 4 right now. We're watching our way through it. And we're about halfway through season 4 at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, so I think but I tend to agree with you, not only with sitcoms, but I'm one that tends to give up on shows maybe a little sooner than I should.
Yes, you do.
Lost would be one. Dexter would be one. Quite a few other shows as well, but those are the two that come to mind. But so yeah, that's why I would agree with you. After about 3 and 4, it gets starts to go downhill.
Most,
this one
not
was
all.
just picking
Of
up.
course, there's exceptions.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
I remember I started watching this show on Netflix, and I started in season 1, and what is there, like 6 episodes? And
Mhm.
7 episodes in season 1. And it wasn't grabbing me, and Brad said just skip season 1, go right to 2. And that's when it kind of started kicking in, and I loved it from there. Like I started with season 2 and went all the way through it, and it's wonderful because there's so many characters that you fall in love with. You want to pull for them.
Mhm.
There's not that necessarily big annoying character. There's just different personalities, but you like them for different reasons and want to see them do well and succeed.
Yes. Brad, you've been quiet.
Yeah. Well, he kind of took what I was going to say there. So,
Oh, sorry.
Oh, all right. Well, we can just skip right over Brad's
big
opinion.
fan of The Office,
Move
as we
on.
all were.
Mhm.
And this show came out, and I'm like, well, yeah, we got to watch that. It looks kind of like The Office, and it's got Amy Poehler in it, and I loved her, and she was great on SNL, especially Weekend Update. But as you alluded to, season 1 was pretty disappointing. It was okay. Like, I didn't hate it, but I wasn't sure if I'd watch season 2. I didn't really know if it was worth it or not. But boy, am I glad I did, because they made a lot of changes. And so season 2 is different because it has the same cast. And so Mark Brandanowitz
Mhm.
is one of the main characters. And I really like that guy. I don't like saying his name. But the focus in season 1 seemed to be so much on Leslie Knope. And it became more of an ensemble after that. Like they retooled a little bit, and the other characters started to shine and have their moments. And so you really started to love all these actors. Some of them you knew and had done some things, but many of them really just took off because of this show. So
Mhm.
season 2 is great, but when they brought in Rob Lowe and Adam Scott, which actually happened right at the end of season 2, like the last episode, I think, the show just took off to a new level, and that's the show that everybody kind of remembers and thinks of because it was that way from then on until all the way through season 7 when it ended. So that's why I picked it, and we're going to talk about 2 episodes that came out in 2011 in season 3.
All
So-
right.
Excellent.
Why don't you?
And you pick some
Right.
doozies.
Yeah, well, so there was a lot to choose from. Like, a part of me thought, well, these are 2 great episodes, but they're also like, I mean, if you haven't watched the show that much, it's not going to be the case. But it's almost like they're cliche. They're so good. I've thought about, well, should I pick some more under the radar ones maybe? Because there's so many other good ones too. But I didn't. So the first one we're going to talk about is Ron and Tammy 2. This was episode 4, and this is where we meet Ron Swanson's ex-wife, Tammy.
Mhm.
Tammy 2, by the way, because later in the series you meet his other ex-wife, Tammy. And this one is played by Megan Mullally, who is, of course, Nick Offerman's real-life wife. And they are just the perfect pairing, seemingly in real life.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
boy, do they work on screen together.
Yes.
Well,
they
and
certainly do.
that's it. It adds a layer of comedy knowing that they are married in real life. I
Yeah.
mean, just having that knowledge and then seeing how they act together and how they have this extreme love-hate relationship on both ends of the spectrum.
Right.
And the way this episode, this first one that we're going to talk about, the way it kicks it off is pretty funny how it's done.
Yep.
So it starts out with Ron getting a late notice from the library. And the library is a running joke on the show, how much he, but also Leslie Knope, who you would think would love the library just based on her character,
Yes.
despises the library because of the people that work there, and she thinks that it is an evil, evil place. And that's just really funny.
Yep. Well, and Ron isn't
This
a
is
big
one of the
fan of
reasons.
anything that's government run or publicly run anyway,
Right.
which is always a
Right.
fun little thing.
But so he realizes right away that the notice is like from Tammy as a way to try to lure him in. And so he takes Leslie to see her because she's always there to help him.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it just gets you right from the start because he walks in and Tammy, Megan Mullally, is eating some beef jerky and she starts slapping her cheeks with it to tempt him.
Well, first off, when they walk into her office, she is bent over with the whale tail sticking out the back. And Leslie's like, whale tail, like she's calling it out.
I want to even back it up a little bit from where he's in his office and first gets the notice from the guy saying that he had this overdue library book and he knows exactly what's going on. And he's just like, oh, really? Do I?
Well, and the name of the book that is overdue is It's Not the Size of the Boat, Embracing Life with a Micro Penis. And I gotta say it's a good read. It's a real page turner. But right off the bat, he knows that this is a ruse from Tammy to get his attention.
Now, normally when he goes to talk to Tammy,
goes.
It's a real problem because he like just totally melts down and can't handle himself around her. But he's in a relationship this time, and it's going well. And so he's very calm and in control, and even doesn't even really need Leslie with him this time. But she's amazed by how his actions. And another quote I love from this part is when they tell Tammy that he's in a committed relationship, and she says she sounds like a real whore.
Because she's isn't she a pediatric orthopedist or something?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, they describe her in like a totally normal way and like as a so that.
Well, and of course the woman that Ron is dating is Tom's ex-wife.
Tom's ex-wife. That's exactly what I was just going to say.
Yep.
And so that adds a layer of complexity to it. And then, well, anyway, go on. I'm not going to jump a couple seasons ahead. Go ahead.
Another side plot here then is they are trying to plan the future Harvest Festival, or is it the Harvest Festival, or is it? But they need the police.
It's a Harvest Festival.
It is that.
Yes.
Okay. Yep. They need the police presence, and so Ben and Leslie are going to be working on trying to get that hooked up. And another running gag that's always wonderful in the show is Ben's behavior around cops. Because he just cannot handle himself. He gets all flustered and scared. And another running gag, they're talking about what they will have for a menu, and he suggests, well, should we have some salads for a healthy option? And everybody just looks at him, and he just gets ripped. Because if you know anything about the show, too, healthy foods and good choices in Pawnee, Indiana just do not mix.
No.
Even for like the seemingly like together people, that's just not something they do.
Right. So then he also suggests maybe throwing in a calzone.
Yes, which they also rip on him mercilessly for. And that's a running gag. And I love that one.
Leslie.
Yeah.
But I don't get it because I love calzones. So I'm team
I
Ben.
do too.
But she says it's a pizza that's harder to eat.
Yeah. So these running gags that it's not just this episode, but you see them crop back up multiple times, and they're always very funny.
Mm-hmm.
So as you mentioned, Ron's relationship is with Tom Haverford's ex-wife, who he was married in a green card marriage, and everybody at first assumed it was him because he is Indian, but he's from South Carolina, and his wife was from Canada, and she's the one who needed the green card. And once she became a citizen, they got divorced, and it was sad for him. And then it was very difficult to watch her end up dating Ron for a while after that.
Right. So Ron and Wendy, they go out for a pre-lunch. And this is where she tells him that she's actually moving back to Canada. She got a job offer.
Which sets the scene that Ron is going to now have trouble because he's going to have to go through losing her.
And then she goes, I don't suppose you'd want to move to Canada, would you?
Right.
And he just laughs. Right. I don't suppose I would. I would.
Not a fan of Canada either.
He is the most American of American men, for
He's
sure.
American, like what you'd think of in that time as being very Republican, against anything.
I wouldn't say Republican because he's against all government.
Yeah, he's
Well,
against all
that's
government.
He's a
yeah.
libertarian.
Well, that would be
Yep.
okay. Maybe that's a better way to put it.
Yep.
Chris and Ann, that's Chris Traeger, Rob Lowe, and Ann Perkins,
Mm-hmm.
Rashida
Ann
Jones
Perkins.
are dating now. But he is also moving probably back to Indianapolis, which is a struggle there. And she is excited to have him ask her to move with him because she thinks that's the logical step and that he's going to be hinting at that soon. So she would go with him, but it's not really working that way. And she's getting a little frustrated by his actions, and they'll continue on through the episodes.
Well, and the other thing with Chris is that April has been moved over to his office as his assistant. And if you could have two different personalities together, I don't know if you could find it. I mean, he is always so upbeat, so excited to be anywhere, wherever he's at is the place to be in that moment. Happy to see everyone. And of course, April is the exact
It's like
opposite.
almost goth. Yeah, she's
Yes.
like a goth chick kind of.
Nothing's
Oh yeah,
cool.
I passed my note here because I loved when she's working for him and he's talking about Post-its and the color of the Post-its he wants, and then he gives her a Post-it and says, "I have a Post-it for you. Great job," which
Right.
she just hates.
She reluctantly accepts it.
The calzone thing pops up again with the cops, and the cop just looks at Leslie and goes, "What the hell is wrong with this guy?"
I love that cop.
Yep.
The main chief of, is he the chief of police or whatever?
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
the main cop guy, but he was just hilarious. The interactions were just so perfectly awkward anytime with Ben.
So
So
the
that,
whole
I
point,
think-
the whole thing with the pizza is the parks department is throwing a pizza party for the cops to try to soften up the
Correct.
chiefs so that they'll work the harvest festival for free. So they're at the bar at night and everybody's, enjoying the pizza and everybody's there and Ron is there and he's upset because Wendy is going to be moving out of town. And of course, this is when Tom walks into the bar with his date for the evening. And that happens to be
Tammy.
Yes.
So Tom set it up with Tammy just to make Ron mad, to get him back, because he feels bad about Ron dating his ex-wife. But Tom knows better and knows what this will do, and so he's going to end up getting in trouble for his actions, but he can't help himself.
Well, and Tammy
those
is
two
doing it because
dancing
it's
on the
part
dance
of the
floor is
games that she
hilarious.
plays. Yeah.
So Tammy
Go
is
ahead.
and Tom are dancing. They're having a good old time. She is licking his tie. Is that what she's doing?
Yes.
She says something about I'm just tasting my date. Just trying to manipulate Ron. And of course, Ron, now a single man, after a squabble with Tammy where she slaps him. And the cops all, of course, step in, and there's a fun little report with the cops.
Oh, yes, I love this. So every cop gives their little incident report, and they all end up with, "She's a real piece of work."
Real piece of work.
Real piece of work.
So Tammy and Ron, they tell Leslie they're just going to go, talk it out, go have a cup of coffee. And, of course, Leslie is mortified that, he's going to backslide into a relationship with Tammy. And we see them the next morning, and where are Tammy and Ron?
So they're in jail, and they're humping. And Ron now has cornrows and a kimono on. Oh, and they're married, by the way, too.
Yes, and he has
they
a
got
matching
married
ring.
overnight.
Yeah, he has a matching ring on his penis, or in his penis. So basically a Prince Albert ring that has been put on. And I love the part where they have the flashback to the night before. And all the things that happened between the two of them, where they're on this all-night rager, and he goes and gets his cornrows, they get remarried. My favorite part was when they are getting married by the justice of the peace in the courthouse, and as soon as he says you may kiss the bride, they both go into like a head pushing contest where you try to push the person's head down towards your crotch. And of course, he tries to do it to her first, but then she overpowers him. It was just amazing.
Well, then there's a moment where he backs up and he's rubbing his foot like a bull on the ground
Yes.
and breathing heavily before
Yes.
attacking.
Oh, well, and also
I don't remember
Ron,
exactly this line I have out of place. Maybe somebody says, I don't want him within 500 feet of the library. And Ron goes, that's good. Or no, it's Leslie that says, that's good advice for all of us.
right. Well, and the other thing with Ron's appearance, besides his cornrows, the middle part of his mustache is missing. And I think it was Ben who goes, and you even shaved your, the middle part of your mustache off. And he goes, that wasn't shaved off. It was rubbed off due to friction. And of course, Ron is still hammered at this point, right? I mean, he hasn't sobered up at all. And it's
Ron's never drunk.
Middle of the morning.
Except for the next episode.
I was going to say, this episode, the next episode.
We'll get into it.
Oh, my
so
God,
Jerry,
so
we
good.
haven't seen much of yet, but he starts to be his usual idiotic self.
Mm-hmm.
So they're having an intervention for Ron, and Jerry shows up with a wedding present and just screws up the whole thing.
Yes. Intervention? I thought you said reception.
And they're all talking to Ron, and he won't listen to anybody. So Leslie shows him a pre-made video that he's made himself, telling himself what to do. But he's so out of it, he doesn't even buy that. And Leslie says, that's you. That's you telling you that.
Right, he's mad at everybody else for judging him.
Well, this is when Tammy comes in and Ron gets up and starts swiping his foot like a bull. This is where that happens.
Yeah, the line I liked from Ron on the tape is that he says that Tammy is a parasite that entered through your privates and has lodged herself in your brain.
So we haven't seen much of Andy yet either, but he's going to help April try to get out of, because April hates working for Chris. So he brings this letter to Chris written by Burt Macklin of the FBI.
Yes.
Telling Chris that April's needed somewhere else. And Chris says something like, I'm not so sure about this. And Andy just goes, I don't know. It sounds like it was Macklin's call.
Right. And of course, Burt Macklin is Andy's alter ego FBI agent guy that he always comes back to on many occasions.
But to make matters
comes back in the next episode that we'll talk about.
To make matters worse.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, all I was going to comment was that Andy is played by Chris Pratt, who doesn't even seem anything like what you know Chris Pratt to be today. And so it's a completely different person, a different character than like the action movies that he stars in now. Looks different.
Much more pudgy and unkempt.
Yes.
And
Yes, but it fits his role perfectly, and I love his character.
Mm-hmm.
To make matters worse here for Anne, when Chris gets this letter and is talking to Andy there and in front of everybody, he actually invites April to work for him in Indianapolis and move with him instead of Anne. And so she thinks that's pretty terrible. Not to live with him, but even still, just to go work with him.
Right. And of course, Andy's worried about that as well, because if Anne moves to Indianapolis, where does that leave him?
Yeah.
With April.
So Ben goes and is able to get the cops to the Harvest Festival, which is a nice scene. So he's still very awkward, but he goes and does this on his own without Leslie, and he comes through like a champ. And he hears about Leslie in the past dating Dave, who's moved to San Diego. And Dave was played by Louis C.K. in season 2 before he had some problems, and he was just fantastic on the show too. And so he gets him, and he's about to leave, and he did his job, but he's about to leave, and then he hears about Dave, and then he starts getting awkward, and he starts asking the questions. Well, was it serious?
Right.
And eventually, after like 3 questions, the chief just goes to him, "What are you, some kind of pervert?"
Right.
No.
Right, because at this point in the show, Leslie and Ben aren't officially dating, but Leslie likes Ben, Ben likes Leslie, but there's they haven't really said anything to each other about that, correct?
Correct.
Right. They're trying to be careful because they are co-workers, and so they want to respect that whole process.
Well, I don't even think they're quite that far yet either. That comes up more later, the whole
in the
This is the
yeah, it
feeling
does
each
come
other
up a
out
little more in the
stage.
next episode. Excuse me.
They're flirty.
Yep.
Oh, the feeling each other out stage seems further along.
So
That
then
was
there
one of
is
my
a
favorites.
shower for Tammy at the library, and Ron is there, and you can tell he's already starting to snap out of it because he's not enjoying this. But who else is sitting there but Jerry again, eating some cake?
Eating some cake.
Yeah.
And Tom
Just-
comes to help because Leslie has just berated him for his actions and setting this whole thing up, and that it's all his fault. And Tammy calls him Glenn a few times, even though she was just on a date with him. And then she just beats the crap out of
Oh my
him and
God.
turns maniacal. And this is where Ron snaps out of it and sees her for who she really is. And he picks
Yes.
Tom up like a baby and carries him out.
Right. Well, and
Well,
as,
this was
as-
after like that. I don't know if they had a stunt double or what, but like she legitimately threw him
Mhm.
into the bookcase,
Oh, yeah. They
and
knocked it over.
that looked real, like painful.
Well, and as they're kind of, breaking up here, her line to him is, "Last night I faked 4 out of the 7." And Ron's
So did I.
response is, "So did I."
There's another great little interaction about calzones, too, because Leslie is kidding Ben and says they should go out and together. The tension is building between them, so you can see that, but there's that rule that Pete brought up. But she acts like she's really upset at him for bringing up calzones again and like storms out, and he's just like, what is going on? But then she comes back and says she's just kidding, and again, it's the whole flirtation, and those two have pretty great chemistry.
Well, he like had to breathe this big sigh of relief, like he thought he really pissed her off.
Yeah.
And that was going to be it. It was going to be over between those two right there because of the calzone. But then
And
she
the
said she
episode
was
ends
kidding,
with
and
Ron and Tom having a drink together out of Jerry's wedding present glasses that he gave Ron, which he's not going to return.
Right.
He's going to keep that.
And of course, he tells Tom that chicks love scars, and when they see the scar, they'll just assume that he was beat up by a man and not a woman.
And that's another thing. Throughout the whole series, Tom is just the biggest baby, and he will literally like start crying and lay on the ground, and he'll do it to get advantage of people, and he's really good at that. But he plays like a man child
Oh, for sure.
often. All right. Anything else you want to add about Ron and Tammy too?
No,
I love the episode. I was listening to an episode, one of the first episodes of Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, and he had those two on. And based on the stories they were telling on that podcast, their sex life is very similar to what was portrayed on this show. They are very free and vigorous in their lovemaking. So
yeah, they actually remind me of that. It's Will Ferrell and Rachel Dratch in the hot tub on SNL.
Yes.
That's kind of what they remind me of in
SNL
real life.
skit.
Like they might be like very woodsy, and he's big outdoorsy, and
yep.
so. All right, we are going to move on then, and we're going to skip ahead 9 episodes to episode 13, which I find it interesting because it's called The Fight. But that is not what I would call this episode, and what I would not be looking for if I was looking for this episode. I would call it the Snake Juice episode.
Yeah, I would too.
As it should be. So if you know what I'm talking about, you might recognize it from that. So there's a nice little scene at the beginning here where everybody's fighting over the coffee machine that is broken, and Ron has set this up to get everybody to turn on each other, and they're all fighting. And then he walks away and smiles because he's the one who actually broke it. And it's his little joke.
It was getting too chummy around here.
Yes,
Yeah.
he needs to mix up the dynamic.
Well, it kind of defines that one scene. If you've never watched the show before, watch that one scene and you get a good feel for who all of the characters are, because right away, Leslie Knope comes out and senses the tension, and she just says, "It was me, I did it." And he's like, no, you didn't. It wasn't you.
Yep, she'll take the bullet for everybody else just so that there's office harmony.
Harmony,
You know.
yes. and then the tension starts to build between the others. They start to argue, and then Brad, as you said, Ron steps away and said it was him that broke the coffee maker, and he was just trying to set it all up.
Yep.
So right away we hear about Tom is always inventing and coming up with ideas for things, which he goes through a little series of ideas on this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But his snake juice is a high-end Kahlua style liquor that he's going to be selling at the Snake Lounge that night, and so he's trying to get everybody to come help talk it up and sell it,
promote it. Yeah.
And if they don't help him, he says, you're going to be on his dunzo list, which the funniest part of this is Andy gets all worried and says,
oh, Andy is in.
I don't want to be on that dunzo list.
Yep.
So cute.
Well, and one of the other main themes of this episode is that they need a new, is it public relations for the health department in the town? Because the old guy found out his wife was cheating on him and put signs up all over town, basically saying that Jan Cooper has chlamydia, and and then at the bottom it's brought to you by Pawnee Health Department. And one of my favorite ones was that she's the mayor of Horville.
Yes.
Which to me sounds like more of a guide trip if you're going to go there than, maybe a family vacay destination.
But then there's one where he says, come back to me, Jan. I'm sorry about everything. And
yes.
There's little signs that go through this whole process.
Yes.
and then it turns itself back around on the next one.
Right.
I can't remember what it was, but it was like the last one was another vicious one.
So while this episode
go ahead.
It's about snake juice, it's also a lot about Anne and Leslie, and that'll lead to the title here in a minute. So Anne and Leslie are discussing her current boyfriend situation, because Anne is kind of, at this point, I think, has Chris left for a while, or like she's single again. And so Anne is helping, trying to set her up. And Leslie is always chasing Ben. There's a scene here where she chases him down the hallway. And again, you can see how much they've gotten even further in their little rendezvous
playfully
together.
Having fun with each other. Yes.
But Tom is in the conference room trying to coach everybody how to sell snake juice, and he's even got a script he wrote. But if all else fails, the talking points are high-end VIP lifestyle.
Yes.
And one of Ron's lines is, "It's about to get crazy." And he doesn't say it right, of course.
Crazy. He can't read it.
Tom has to tell him how to say it, and nobody's doing it the right way, so he's very upset.
Mm-hmm. This is all in his guerrilla marketing.
Guerrilla marketing, correct.
Yes. So you want to basically say these things around people in a casual way so that you drum up all this interest in.
Hey, have you heard of it? Have you tried this new snake juice? Yeah, it's VIP.
Well, and you see that later at the bar.
The way that Tom would speak.
Yes. Right. And you see it later at the bar where Leslie's just walking through the bar while she's still sober and just using the catchphrases.
And she's not even in the conference room with the script, but of course she knows everything about it and is the one who's there trying to sell it better than anybody.
Yep.
Because that's Leslie.
Well, and one way that that Andy and April decide to get into the script is to role play, because they wouldn't say these things as themselves. So they decide to show up at the club as Burt Macklin, and she is a wealthy
Janet
widow.
Snakehole,
yes. And she's a wealthy widow.
This is after she tells Andy, I hate talking to people about things. But he's like, but we can't skip this, babe. I don't want to end up on that dunzo list. So then they come up with the role-playing idea. Before that, though, Leslie is also working on Anne, not only with boyfriends and everything else, but she has set up an interview for her the next morning for a PR job. And in Leslie fashion, she's got an entire case full of homework that she expects Anne to just take home and read that night and be completely prepared for this interview.
Right.
So she leaves her with that and is expecting that Anne will do that.
Because this way they can work together and they won't have to have these quick little conversations in a hallway. They'll be able to see each other more often.
All right, so now we are on to the Snake Hole Lounge. And another reason why I picked this episode, Jean Ralphio.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got the main cast on this show, but the thing about this show is, my God, these side characters. And we're going to talk about that after the show, or at the end of this show. Jean Ralphio might be the greatest, like, part-time character I've ever seen on a show. And so this is a great episode to have because he plays a nice role here. So Jean Ralphio is Tom Haverford's best friend, and he's always up to whatever he wants to do. He's up for anything. Totally supports him, although he's a complete idiot and he has no money, and eventually he drives them bankrupt.
Right.
But in this one, he's always doing these little raps when he meets everybody too, and he just can't end the rhyme in the right. He has a rhyme, and then he says like 2 more words or syllables after that.
The rhyme is really good. The rhyme's really good
until
until he messes it up, and the disappointment on his face when he knows he screws it up every time is just great.
But then a couple
Tom
other
has to keep reminding him, "Hey, it's supposed to rhyme. It's supposed to rhyme."
A couple other lines from Jean Ralphio here that just fit him are when they're talking about going in on this, and he's like, "We got to get that paper." And then he refers to it as, and he's even talking to like Ron like this, who of course nobody would talk to Ron like this, but he says it's just straight up delicious.
Right. Well, and is this the part where there's just a part with Tom here where he just rattles off all these great ideas that he has?
Yeah, I did not write any of those down.
Yeah.
I don't know if you.
So I wrote a few of them. He has a bottled water that's H2O. He's got a phone that smells good. And the last one I wrote down was a nightclub called Eclipse that's only open twice a year for 1 hour, and the cover charge is $5,000.
$5,000. I could keep going.
Right. It's just such great little things that they write for him. It's just awesome. And he's always so enthusiastic. Like, it is the greatest idea that anybody has ever heard.
Smile is fantastic.
Yeah. Oh God, it's just the best.
So speaking of side characters, we now see Anne has showed up at this party unexpectedly to Leslie, and she's dancing with the douche.
The douche.
Who is of the morning radio shock jock program Crazy Ira and the Douche. And the Douche is played by Nick Kroll, who of course is always good in everything he does.
Yes.
So instead of preparing for her interview, she's not only at the party, but she's with the Douche. Leslie is not pleased. And this is what will eventually lead to, this along with alcohol, will lead to them getting in a huge fight. And that is why this is called The Fight.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we see, and then we just start to see everybody. So you mentioned the role playing. So now we see April show up, and she's Janet Snakehole. She is a very rich widow with a terrible secret. I don't think we ever find out what that secret is, though.
No. She is brilliant, though, in doing this, and it's like this whole series. I feel like what's this actress's name that plays
Aubrey Plaza?
Aubrey.
Okay, well, she doesn't really get it. She's a whole different character, and she really does show off her acting range. I think with this one role that she has, she's completely different, and the way that she rattles it off is just perfect. Mm-hmm. I loved it.
Well, I love that she's got like the cigarette with the long filter, you know,
on the little hat with the veil thing on top.
She looks like a widow.
Talking in an accent too.
Mm-hmm. And Burt Macklin is hot on her trail.
So Burt Macklin is the best damn FBI agent they had until he was framed for a crime he didn't commit, stealing the president's rubies. And after he says that, she just slaps him and walks away. And he's first kind of shocked, and he just smiles like, "Oh, this is awesome."
Yep. Those two are just such a great pair together.
See, because another episode I was maybe going to pick was their wedding. They get this shotgun wedding, and I think that was before. I think they're married already at this one, isn't it?
Are they?
It's either they just got married or it's right after this. But anyway, that would have been a great one to pick too.
Yeah.
All right. So Ron does not advertise anything unless he uses it exclusively. So he is not interested in the snake juice idea, but Tom convinces him to try it. He says, if this is not something that you love, you can shave Jean Ralphio's head. And Jean Ralphio's just kind of smiling and what?
He's like, a lot riding on this.
And then, and then as he takes a drink, he's just kind of muttering, there's a lot riding on this.
And of course,
but
Ron
Andy
loves it. Yeah.
And so he is going to go out and start to promote it. And he walks up to these people and says, listen to me, you should be drinking this snake juice. My word is basically a guarantee. And these little young people are like, who is this guy? But
and it's just great because
they're willing to try it though.
Yep. Well, it's just great because everybody gets into it and everybody just gets absolutely shit-faced off of this stuff.
Yes. Well, it's 140 proof or 70% alcohol.
Yes, and I love the scene where they just kind of do quick flashes.
Oh, that's the highlight of the show. Baba Booey. Baba Booey.
You've got Ben saying Baba Booey. You got Ron dancing in April's little hat.
And she's talking in like another language, just rattling off nonsense.
Yeah, she's like speaking in tongues, and it's just so great. And I think the only one who's not drinking it is Donna, right? She's the only one.
She refuses because she can only drink bottled water or something.
She was on a cleanse. That's what it was. Her and Chris didn't drink anything, and they're talking about the cleanses that they were on.
So now we're on the couch in the bar with Anne and the douche and Leslie, and they're fighting and starting to talk about it. And Leslie is just ripping on him. And when they both, because even Anne is, even though he's her date, and he's just sitting there like, sitting right here. And like, this guy is an idiot. And he laughs and goes, ha ha, classic.
Right.
But they are getting drunker and fighting more and more, and that will keep spilling on. But this is then we find out what's in snake juice, which is what we just said. It's 70% alcohol. And Chris will not drink it. He won't drink it either.
Right.
Because he said, I believe an ounce of that would literally kill me.
Kill me. Yes.
And then he goes to Jean Ralphio. Or Jean Ralphio goes, you want me to write a rap about you? And he goes, yes! Because he is
very
so
enthusiastic
for everything.
Yep. Except to drink snake juice.
Yeah.
So
Andy gives some role play advice to Ben, and he says that he should dream up a scenario where sex is forbidden because you're her boss. and Ben goes, that is our actual situation.
But then they added something else onto it.
And there's a lot of slurring as they fight. They're both wonderful to watch because they can't even talk straight anymore.
Right.
And then so the drunk parts, you mentioned 3 of them. The one you didn't mention was Tom, who said, I'm like an elephant. When I walk into a room, everyone is like, he's in there.
He's in there. Well, and I love the part at the end of it when Donna has got everybody piled into her minivan to take them home, and she goes, where to first? And Leslie goes, your mom's butt or your mama's butt or whatever. And they got Jerry strapped.
Yeah, everyone's accounted for, but Jerry's tied to the roof.
And he's missing his shoe. Did you notice that as they drive away, they got him strapped to the roof of the car, and he's missing his shoe, of course.
And when she says your mother's butt, they all just laugh. They think that because they're all just so drunk. All right, so it's a long night. We're back at the office. Everybody's hungover, except Ron, who has his own hangover cure and just walks in smiling and whistling like he always does.
Yep. Like nothing happened.
So April's trying to hang in there, and she's still acting like Janet, but she's incoherent. And then Kyle, that guy that Andy's always doing his shoes, and he just gets ripped. He's a funny guy because he's only there to get made fun of by Andy. But then Andy throws up on his shoes.
Right.
Well, he stands up. Good. He was like, because April came back in and sort of did her character while she's hungover. And then he stands up to follow her out. And as soon as he stands up,
he throws
you can just see.
Gives the head rush. Well, and Anne comes in for the interview the next morning. And I love her line that the slogan for snake juice should be, lots of regret and shame.
But Ben goes to Anne's house.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
because she didn't show up, and she's wearing snow pants.
I came home last night and thought I might go out for a sled ride or something.
Both Anne and Leslie, of course, feel terrible, and they both taking blame, but not to each other, but like to Ben. And Anne makes a comment about how much Leslie likes him, and his face just lights up.
Mm-hmm.
So he's trying to mend things there and make sure Anne gets up to the interview, and so she does show up, but she's wearing a sweater inside out and backwards. Yes. But she gets the job. Which, did you think this interview? It's with Ben and Leslie, and it's pretty short. Did she really need to do that mountain of homework that Leslie claimed she needed?
No.
Well, that was the thing, that Leslie is always about overdoing it and trying to make
I know, but I just imagined at the time that her interview was not with Leslie; that it would be with somebody else.
She also did have a second interview with Rob Lowe's character.
Oh yeah.
After that.
All right, so Ron gives Tom a gift and supports him because he does believe in Tom, and he likes self-made, independent people, and he that don't rely on anybody else. So he supports Tom's business antics to a point, and there's some foreshadowing there because later in the series that comes up again, far down the road. But he loves that he's not trying to be part of the government, and he's doing something on his own. And then at the end of the episode, they're all sitting around listening to the douche. And it's just terrible and stupid, but they're all just laughing because they just think that show is the funniest thing ever.
Well, and they're all involved.
Because they're like, that's you, or that's me. They know that they're talking about,
he's talking about them. The previous night.
Right.
Yes.
Oh my God. If you're going to take one episode out of the entire series, that might be the one. It's just got it all.
It does.
Yes. Well,
plus
done,
adding those extra characters too. It's so good. So that's why I picked them. Anybody got any more to say about the episode?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I love the show. And as we're talking about Jerry, one of the things I love about Jerry is that his wife in the series is Christy Brinkley.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
because everybody just hates Jerry. And they act like he's the worst guy and the biggest sad sack in the world. And then you get a glimpse of his life, and he's got the hottest wife and these 3 hot, beautiful daughters. Gorgeous and they all love each other so much. It's like they're the Brady Bunch.
Yes.
And his life is just amazing.
Well, he's the opposite side of the coin of Kevin from The Office.
Yeah.
Like, his home life is just perfect. And, he's kind of the sad sack at the office. And that's
it's really cool that they set his life up like that, because if you watch the show, I mean, he gets mercilessly just beat up on by everybody. Like, they are so mean to him. But then when you see his real life and see that he's really secretly getting the last laugh, like, it adds another layer to the humor. Yes. And as the show goes on, it gets better and better.
Yep.
Right.
The other thing I want to say about the show is that Ron Swanson, obviously one of the great characters in comedy history, he has this rough exterior this whole time, but then as the show unfolds and the more you see him, the more you can tell he cares about the people, and especially he cares about Leslie more than anyone. Yeah. And he's willing he would sacrifice his life for her.
But like I said, just the way he treated Tom at the end of this, I mean, it was kind of a disaster, but he's all for it. And him and Tom have kind of that cool relationship throughout, but he's that way with Andy later too. Him and Andy form like this bromance almost, and he really tries to get Andy to become like a more independent, because Andy's just such a mess, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And Andy becomes like his little pet toy that he's going to mold into a man.
Well, and like you say, between Ron and Leslie, like, Leslie believes that government, should help everyone and be a instrument in everybody's life. And Ron is completely the other way. Everything, keep the government out of everything. But yet, through their years of working together, they do have that wonderful relationship that's formed, where they do really love each other. And
which is funny
they're
because
great.
Ron works for the government. They all work for the government.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I could go on and on and on about this show. We could do 55 more episodes right now. It's so good. All right. So for our closure tonight, I picked a topic based on watching, like I said, Jean Ralphio and The Douche. I said, let's figure out who you think are some of the best side characters in the history of TV. But I didn't mean so they're people who were in the show, but they weren't in every episode. They kind of came and went. And so they were they were important at times, but other times you don't even see them maybe for a few weeks. But they made that impact and they were really important. And so I was curious what you'd come up with. And so I'll go last because that's how we usually do it.
I can go first. I'm going to start top to bottom. My number one, with a bullet, the side character that makes me laugh and literally is probably the funniest character on the entire show, on one of the top shows of all time, for me. And this guy puts me in tears sometimes just watching him. Frank Costanza. Jerry Stiller is
yes.
He is so amazing, and he became like more of a main character. So I didn't know if he fit your category.
No, he does. Well, the other thing I had said is they had to be kind of in the series though from beginning to end for the most part, which technically the Costanzas didn't show up till like season 4, I think, which is you don't really realize that unless you look back. So it feels like he was always there.
He was there the whole time.
Oh, was I got him down criteria? They had to be in the series from season 1 to
for the longer part of the run.
I have him on mine too, Pete. Relax.
All right.
I think that's a great one, Pete.
My next one, I don't know that he was in the earlier seasons. I don't think he was actually. He came later. But I had Paul from Cheers.
Yeah,
he wasn't.
He crossed
my mind early.
When he was on, he would just come up with probably the best lines, better than Norman Cliff a lot of times, because he was so seldom used. But when he was used perfectly.
The last year or two, he almost became as used as Cliff and Norm. He became kind of like a part of the main cast, but he was a great choice that I thought of too.
Yep. The next one, probably fresh on my mind because we just talked about him, Jean Ralphio. Just because I don't know, with both him and Tom, who is Aziz Ansari, I think a lot of that is just improv, right? For both of those guys, I think they're just that's who they are, and they're throwing it out there.
Jean Ralphio has a show on Netflix with another guy, and I mean, he that is what he does.
Ben Schwartz is one of the better known, improv guys. Didn't he do a thing with Middleditch?
That's what I just said.
Oh, you just said another guy.
Well, I didn't think of his name, but yeah.
Okay. All right.
The next one I had was Ranjit from How I Met Your Mother, the taxi.
See, he's a perfect answer because he was in the first episode all the way to the end. So he fits the criteria that I was getting at perfectly.
The next one, it's actually two that go together. And Brad, I know that I know which one is the first episode that you're going to think of anytime that when I mentioned these two that go together, but actually, which they were great in. But anytime these two are on the screen together, the exchanges are just so hilarious. I had Principal Skinner and Superintendent Chalmers from The Simpsons.
Steamed hams.
Steamed ham. That
regional
whole
expression.
Exchange.
Utica.
Right. But Principal Skinner is more of a main character than Superintendent Chalmers, but
he's not in every episode.
He's not. No, definitely not. But when that's the best exchange that you just mentioned. But there are more examples of when those two are on screen together. It's just hilarious, and so that's what I had from The Simpsons. That's my top 5.
All right,
Gifford.
Very well done. So I've got a couple honorable mentions that haven't been said yet. Marv Sr. from How I Met Your Mother, Marshall's dad. I always loved his character whenever he was on. I just
He
want to
must
say,
have, sorry, he must be in more than in the later seasons because he's not in very much at all.
right?
The
Well,
first
it's
four
coming up, yeah.
seasons. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, he was in.
He was in
He
the
was.
first season because he was in
Yep.
the Thanksgiving one that I almost
There
picked. So
was, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
but yeah,
Yep.
you'll see him more.
Okay.
Another one, just because I want to say the name is Boner from Growing Pains. Boner, anyone?
I knew somebody was going to say that.
I also picked Jack Dunphy from Modern Family, Fred Willard's character.
Yeah, he's always good.
He was excellent, and of course, he was on until the end of his run, unfortunately. Otherwise, he probably would have made it to the end of the show. But my top 5, number 5, Sassy Collins from Ted Lasso, Rebecca's best
Sassy.
friend. I love her when she's
That's
on.
a good one.
She is so much fun. Always kicks the party into high gear when she's on. So I picked her. Obviously, newer character, but I like her.
Oh, she's great.
Number 4, Barry Kripke from Big Bang Theory. Always picking on Sheldon.
Is he the comic book store owner?
No, he had the speech impediment. He was another physicist.
Oh, so okay. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. My number 3 is Jack Geller, Ross and Monica's dad.
Oh, Elliot Gould.
Oh, that's that's an oversight on my part because I loved him too.
Well, and
10 minutes ago, a comment like that would have floored me.
Well, and I have a huge hole in my list too, Pete, because I don't have Frank Costanza. I didn't think of it, so that was a big miss on my part.
Yeah, I don't have anybody from Friends coming up on mine either, but the parents that's really good.
Well, and especially him, because he had so many great lines where he's like just kind of out of it, and he throws a comment in that's so off color. My number 2 is Ted from Scrubs, the poor lawyer in the hospital. He had so many great parts with his a cappella group and always being the whipping boy for Kelso. And he was great. And then my number 1 is Newman from Seinfeld. I just loved whenever he was on screen as Jerry's nemesis. So that was my number 1. But Frank Costanza is a huge oversight on my part. So that's my list. I can't wait to hear Brad's.
All right, we don't have a lot of overlap. Some shows, some stuff here, but I had 3 honorable mentions that we haven't said yet. You said Boner. I'll raise you Cockroach. The Cosby Show. I loved Schitt's Creek. It seemed everybody was kind of equal. There weren't a lot of side characters, but I love Bob. Bob, the garage guy, was great. Every time he came in, bouncing into the scene, he was great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then my last one is actually an actor. Jason Mantzoukas is one of the funniest freaking guys ever. And so he actually is Dennis Feinstein on Parks and Rec. So he's one right there, the Cologne guy. But he also was Adrian Pimento on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, a great character. And then he was there was a show called I'm Sorry that should still be on. It was one of the funniest shows a few years ago. And he was on that show too. And he would just pop up anywhere. And he's always the best.
Right.
Top 5, I did more by show. So my number 5 from Curb Your Enthusiasm, I have Ted Danson. I love because he's on quite a bit, playing himself, and I love his role. And I also had Leon, which, as I'm thinking here, I mean, he actually becomes a main character.
He was pretty big.
So maybe he's not the best choice, but I love Leon. I mean, he's great.
Yes.
Nobody said this one. Pete, I'm surprised you didn't think of this one. Number 4, Larry, Daryl, and Daryl.
Oh, that's a good one.
Newhart.
Yeah.
They were like the original Lost in Side character, at least for our era. Number 3, I have The Simpsons too, but I didn't pick what you picked. I picked Troy McClure. You might remember him from such Simpsons episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I also wrote down Mo, because Mo wasn't on every episode, but I thought he was kind of good.
There's a million Simpsons characters that you could put, and
of course,
can make an argument for any of them.
But he's the one that popped into my head, mostly because of Phil Hartman.
Yes.
At number 2, I put 3 Seinfeld people together. So I have Newman, Frank Costanza, and Jackie Childs.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
The
Jackie was
I mean,
so
he made an
good.
impact.
Johnny Cochran knockoff.
Yes.
And again, he wasn't on the whole series, but he was on for an extended period of time. Once these characters showed up, they were so good that they remained a fixture.
Iconic.
And so
Yeah.
Who
that's
told you to put
that's,
the
I
bomb
guess,
on?
what we're
You know what a
looking
bomb
for.
is?
All right, and then obviously Jean Ralphio is my number one. However, so he had a sister, Mona Lisa.
She was
Saperstein,
great too. I love
played
her.
by oh crap, I'm totally blanking
Hold
on her name now.
Yeah.
Come
I
back to
can't-
that or look that up.
I'm looking it up.
And then their dad, Dr. Saperstein, was Henry Winkler, who was great. Then I already mentioned Dennis Feinstein, but the other one I have to mention, because she was fantastic, is Joan Calamezzo, the local radio,
yeah.
the local host.
Yep.
Who the hell is Mona Lisa? Why can't I think of her name right now?
I'm looking for it. Hold on. Continue speaking.
Well, I hit my end of my list.
Oh, Jenny
I'll have to
Slate.
insert some-
Jenny Slate. I knew it was a J.
Yes.
I could not put it together. Jenny Slate.
Yep. And she's great in anything she's in.
Money, please.
Oh,
So
well, that's a great list.
That's my list. It was fun thinking of those.
Yeah. I can't
All
believe
right.
I forgot Costanza. And I didn't even think of going through The Simpsons because
Well, and you could have picked
you
both Costanza parents. Also, the Seinfeld parents are great too. I mean,
right.
that's a show where you could go on and on.
Well, and Marty Funkhauser.
Yeah.
P.S. Your is in the sink. I mean, one of the greatest lines ever.
Frank, you bring up a good point. Frank and Estelle Costanza together.
Yeah.
Oh my
Mhm.
God, those two were just perfect for each other, and
Although there were
absolutely
times
perfect for George. Like,
where those two I thought got a little over the top towards the end. It was like, they took a good thing, and even Seinfeld sometimes took it a little bit too far sometimes, and there was too much yelling and just like.
yeah.
But yes, overall, I mean, they're like iconic characters. So
Yeah, for sure.
All
Well,
right,
let's,
does that do our
thanks for
episode?
playing.
I think so. And
Gifford,
one of
who's
my
your
top
best-
fives, Preacher Row is always in one of my top fives. Sure.
Yeah, definitely not side characters though.
No.
They're in every one of our episodes.
Mm-hmm. Beginning and
All
end.
right. That's right. All right, let's put them on right now.
Hey, you want me
Thanks
to
for
make up a
listening.
rap about your name?
Please
Oh,
do.
That's how we should close the show. Do it.
I don't have one. Too bad.
Hey, it's only one rap. It's the same guy's name. It's just Brian. Can you come up with something for Brian?
Yeah.
That's true.
All
All
right.
right.
We'll see you next time, guys.
Thanks for listening.
All right. This has been the douche.
Standing on my own till fear. No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start tell me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do.